Tate McRae is bland and overrated. Chappell Roan is going to become the most prominent artist in this generation of pop girls. Olivia is the punching bag of stan Twitter because she's so talented. Sabrina comes across as fake, or that she's not being 100% herself. Also, Sabrina Carpenter should not be blowing up the way that she is. Sabrina has a more solid brand identity than Dua, even though she's just recently blowing up. Lorde has better lyrics than Lana. Addison Rae could be the next big pop sensation, but people are just hating. Charli should stop trying to be mainstream, even though she makes bangers. Camila Cabello's new era could have been iconic, but it wasn't handled well with the first single. I asked you guys to send me your unpopular opinions about the latest and greatest crop of pop girls, as well as our iconic pop girls of the past, and let me just say, you guys delivered. I understand why you needed the veil of anonymity to share some of these sentiments, but today I'm going to go through all of them and give you my take on what I think about your unpopular opinions about pop girls in general. And off the top, I would just like to say that I love pop girls. Pop girls are like my everything. They are pretty much the only music that I listen to. Men should never be allowed to make music ever again. We've been new. So what I'm saying in this video, if anything, is either for comedic effect, it's not that serious. You know, if your fave is in this video and she gets insulted, or, you know, you feel as though I've said something unfair, she's going to live another day. I'm merely just the Swiftologist. This is not going to have any impact on them. But also, I'm rooting for all the pop girls, even the ones that I think are kind of flopping at the moment. I am here seated, clapping and cheering for any of them should they turn around and deliver a sleigh. I am just waiting for them to really, you know, to deliver something iconic, to give us a moment. And that's what I love so much about pop girls, is the culture, the pomp and circumstance around it, the kind of excitement and the glamour and the glitz of a pop girl releasing her new single and having a new era. And there are, of course, so many considerations to think about when we're talking about that. Taylor Swift has mentioned that that constant pressure to reiterate can be really overwhelming, and I think that is totally true, and a note that I have taken when I try and discuss different pop girls. But at the end of the day, being a pop girl is kind of an art, and all of the girlies in this video have, you know, expressed a desire to be a pop girl. And I think what makes a main pop girl is probably a separate video that I don't want to really get into today. Today, I'm kind of just going to go through each person, and when I'm talking about them, really just compare them to themselves. I'm going to try and keep it to that. Like, have they done something before that was really iconic that I think they could be doing again? If they're slacking, where can they be picking it up and improving it? And, you know, there is a lot of hateration in this video, but it doesn't come from me because, again, these are not my opinions. I'm merely reacting to them. But if you're new here, my name is Zach. I'm the Swiftologist, and I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture, more often than not about the pop girls, I'm realizing. And I love to take a highbrow or an analytical approach to a lowbrow subject. And that is not a derision from me. I think that pop music is incredible. I think that it's intelligent. I think it's often a lot smarter than people give it credit for. And I also think that it has a really singular and unique place in culture. Like, the ability of a pop song to spread a message around the world or to unite people feeling a certain way, that is something really magical that I think that other art forms don't necessarily have. If a monoculture is ever able to exist, it is through the medium of the pop song in this day and age, I believe. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Over 50% of you that watch my videos are not subscribed, so I'm going to need you to rectify that right now. The first one isn't really an opinion, it's just a statement that I wanted to share and concur with. I am living for the female pop renaissance. It's giving female gaze finally. Yes, I think that for sure our pop music at the moment is so dominated by women, and it's a really exciting time to be a fan of pop girls specifically because there are so many newbies, there are so many up and comers, and I think with streaming and with how culture has become so nicheified, it seems like there really is a place for everyone. Like, the pop girls don't all need to be, vying for the same crown. As Taylor Swift once said, we all got crowns and you need to calm down. So I want to be clear that in this video, I'm not trying to pit pop girls against each other. I'm in support of all of them. They all have crowns. There are some opinions that have been submitted that directly compare them, so I will be commenting on that. But, I want them all to succeed, truly. Let's start with an opinion about a new pop girl. Tate McRae is bland and overrated. This was one of the most submitted opinions that I got. By the way, when I asked for these opinions, I put out a call on my Instagram, so if you want to be involved in sharing your unpopular opinions on a variety of subjects, go follow me there. I kind of sporadically post them from time to time. Tate McRae is an interesting one to me. I got a lot of opinions about her and her non-ability to sing. Some of you think that she can't sing, which is not true. She can sing. She just elects not to. Tate McRae is an interesting case to me because she like many other of the newer pop girls, had a bit of a false start. She was trying to do the Olivia Rodrigo, Avril Lavigne, rock and roll kind of thing, and that just didn't really ring true to who she was. If you're not familiar with the musical stylings of Tate McRae, she is the singer of Greedy, #1 TikTok smash hit. You may know it, you probably do. It might be the only Tate McRae song that you know. She is known for being a bit of a dancer. She has gone viral several times on like Stan Twitter for just giving these incredible performances. And I have to say that is something that Tate McRae has that none of the other pop girls have at the moment. She has this performance ability, this charisma that is really unmatched. And it comes from, I think, being a professional dancer. She was on So You Think You Can Dance. And I think she's definitely more of a dancer than she is a singer. And a lot of people, I think, are not familiar with that model of pop stardom anymore because the general trend and shift in pop music, especially with pop girls, has been towards confessional diaristic songwriting. It's all about like, are you writing? Are you deep? Is what you're saying new and interesting? And we've kind of gotten away from the art of like a B-tier pop girl, like a mid-tier, a middle class of pop girl, which I think a lot of these pop girls we're going to discuss today comfortably fall into. And not everybody needs to be a main pop girl. This is the thing. There can only be so many of them. So I think that Tate McRae is probably given a few unfair lashings because I don't know what people are expecting from her. You don't have to be an all-rounder to be a good pop star. Selena Gomez is a pretty good example of that. She can't sing. She can't really dance either, but she picks the right producers. We'll get into Selena later, but Tate McRae can sing when she chooses to. She just focuses a lot more on her body and the movements that she makes. She puts more emphasis on the performance rather than the singing. And if you look up videos of her singing like slower songs, which I don't like to do because her slower songs are not interesting to me, she can sing. My note for Tate would be lip sync. Give us all the choreo for Greedy, give us all the choreo for X's, but just put a headset mic on and turn the vocal off. Then you will not get accused of being a bad singer anymore. Then instead you will be accused of lip syncing, which I think is having a bit of a resurgence in being iconic. It's kind of a servitude to lip sync at this point. And also I would rather hear just a great track than hear breathless, oh, myself, I put you through hell, so sure of yourself. Like that literally is the Tate McRae model of singing at the moment. And I think that it's kind of iconic and I think that it does serve. But I have to say my issue with Tate McRae is not that she doesn't sing. It's really that her music is not very good. Like that is the issue. Think Later was extremely underwhelming to me. It is just kind of like anything generic pop. Anybody could have made that. It doesn't have like a Tate McRae signature to it. Greedy was excellent. And I think that people are too quick to dismiss one-hit wonders or just one hit because a lot of the girls that are mentioned in this video haven't had a hit in years. Tate McRae was able to get one while kind of being an unknown. So I think that Greedy is a great song. It's very interesting. X's is kind of catchy and fun, but I have to say nothing on that album really stuck with me. It is extremely mid in general, but I also think that putting Greedy out was a runaway success that the label and Tate's management like weren't ready for yet. I don't think they expected it to be as viral as it was. And the pressure to follow up Greedy with 10 more Greedies is like something that you're just never going to be able to achieve. I think we saw that with X's. Like it was good, but it didn't really compare. I'm interested to see the evolution of Tate. I think that she needs to lean more into that like sexy siren thing and away from any sort of like emotional ballads. I just don't think it's her bag. I don't think she's very good at it. It's not very convincing. So she can dance and she clearly loves to dance. So I'm like, let's make music that facilitates the performance of that. Her music videos are really good. Her visuals are great. She is a true music video girl, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I also got a lot of responses comparing Tate to Britney. A lot of people saying she could never be Britney. Some people saying she's this day's modern age Britney. And the thing about Britney is that Britney had really good music. Like the music that Britney was doing were like Max Martin hits. They were songs that were designed to be earworms and go viral, kind of in the vein of Greedy. It had the similar effect on people, but Britney had like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those on an album. Tate is just having one. So I think my hunch is that like Greedy was a bit premature, or they just weren't ready to follow up Greedy with an album full of things just like it. It was a bit of an experiment because it does sound different to everything else that's on the record that actually came out. So I'm kind of like one to watch with Tate. I did get tickets to her concert because I think that she would just be really good live, even though I only know 2 songs. I think that she just would put on a good show. So I'll report back when I see her live and I get a taste of how she performs. But at the end end of the day, like, we don't need pop girls to be being Taylor Swift. I think that's such an unfair comparison at this point because Taylor Swift and even Beyonce's model of pop stardom is so unique and specific to their skill set and also their legacies. It's a lot harder for the younger girlies to command a similar kind of attention because the monoculture doesn't exist. So I think we need to be easier on Tate McRae. I am seated to see the evolution of her as an artist, but I agree that like her current showing is not, conducive to being a main pop girl. Certainly not. Chappell Roan is going to become the most prominent artist in this generation of pop girls. I literally can't agree more. That is, however, a popular opinion. The unpopular opinion that I got about Chappell Roan said that she was overrated and only famous because of TikTok, and her music isn't even that good. And to that I say, that is true, like you have worms in your brain. Chappell Roan is the future of pop music. Out of all of the pop girls currently, bar Olivia, Chappell is the most interesting one to me. She is one that is actually doing something different to what everyone else is doing. Renee Rapp, Sabrina Carpenter, Tate McRae, Lizzie McAlpine, Gracie Abrams, all of them have things in common with each other. They're all doing a similar thing. There are little niches within each of them, but there's at least one other person doing something very similar to each of those people. No one is doing it like Chappell Roan. And I think that it's very unfair to say that she's overrated because I think I'm going to do a whole video on Chappell and like her story and how this moment really came to be for her. But it is partly because of TikTok. But do you understand that because of TikTok, that means that people are organically like falling in love with her music and sharing it with each other? That is what it means to go like truly viral for an artist, because Tate McRae went viral with Greedy, sure, but the song went viral. Tate didn't go viral. Chappell is going viral. And that is because a number of reasons. She's a star, first and foremost. She is an extremely intentional artist. Everything she does is a carefully calculated reference. She is paying homage to the queer community in all of her work, and she makes no bones about that. What's interesting about Chappell is that she refuses to compromise her artistic vision to be more commercially appealing, and that's exactly what makes her commercially appealing. She's very similar to Lady Gaga in that sense, although I will come out and say it, Chappell's music is already better and more interesting than Lady Gaga's. Lady Gaga's first record that she came out with was not really culture shifting. It was like culture writing. She was really writing that like EDM dance pop craze. Currently in pop music, the kind of overarching popular things are like Billie Whisper singing and Olivia Rodrigo like rock and roll, and like Tate McRae sexy. And Chappell Roan is kind of none of those things. She has this very interesting maximalist operatic voice. She's very theater kid energy, but like make it cool. And the way that she has arrived so fully formed as an artist, like with an aesthetic, with a vision, with a voice, with great songs, more than just one or two great songs. The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess is genuinely the best debut album I've heard from a pop star in a really long time. It is an instantly legacy cementing record. Like, there are at least 3 songs on that that would be, great for any artist to have on their debut record. And then she goes even further. And the success of Good Luck Babe, I think, is really building off of the momentum that she created there. But Chappell Roan was not an overnight success. She had a really long slog trying to get where she actually has ended up being. It was an extremely difficult and tough circumstance after being signed by a label so young, then getting dropped, then having to go back to Missouri or wherever she's from and wait tables before clawing her way tooth and nail, self-funding everything to get back to LA and really believe in herself and restart her vision. If you look at the music that she was doing when she was signed versus the music she's doing now, it's like a completely different person. And I have to say, like, to be able to iterate and come up with such a clear and cohesive and like interesting, different perspective after being knocked down so many times, I think that people really relate to the struggle and the hardship element of her story too. We love to see a girl boss winning. Like, truly, that is kind of the essence of the Chappell Roan story. And it just is all elevated by the fact that the music is genuinely great. And when you see her on stage, she's singing. There's no track present. I wish she would have some track present because I'm scared she's going to hurt her voice, but she is howling all the way through her sets. And the Coachella set was really a watershed moment. Why? Because it was the culmination of all of these things. And I mean, Chappell is also she understands the way that pop music is very visual and that you need to be communicating a message through not just your clothes, but like your hair, your makeup, your styling. She understands that you have to present a consistent image over and over and over again to get people to remember you, which is what she's doing with that kind of like crazy Baroque face makeup and the bright red curls and the really outlandish and ostentatious outfits. That is where she really is very similar to Gaga in a sense. But I would even go so far to say that Chappell's music is certainly certainly more innovative and interesting than Lady Gaga's was and has been since. Sorry. Okay, I got so many messages about Olivia Rodrigo. So many. And they're kind of all over the spectrum. Most of them are hateration. One of them I got was Olivia is the punching bag of Stan Twitter because she's so talented. And the second one I got was Olivia's not a good performer. And you know what? Both of those things are true. Both of those things are true. Olivia Rodrigo has an ability to elicit the most heinous and disgusting hatred from people on the internet. I've never seen anything like it. And it is mostly fueled by Taylor Swift hateration. Not from Taylor Swift herself, from the Swifties. They are the number one ringleaders of Olivia's a flop. No one cares about her. Nobody moved for guts, etc. And I just think that that is incredibly misogynistic and unfair. And what they're doing to Olivia, what they say about Olivia, the critiques that they deliver, she can't sing, she's not a good performance, the music she's writing isn't that good, she's probably not even writing it herself. Those are all criticisms that plagued Taylor Swift in her earlier career. But these idiot losers wouldn't understand that because they weren't there the first time around. They weren't there when Taylor wasn't an automatically cool main pop girl that everybody had to respect. Olivia Rodrigo is taking lashings on the internet right now. But you know what? That doesn't stop her from succeeding. And when people are that invested in your downfall, that's when you know that you're doing something really special and something that people really care about. And there is more positive sentiment for Olivia Rodrigo at large than there is on the internet. Stan Twitter is like such a bad sample size of what people actually think because it's the most mentally ill, deranged, like jobless, loser behavior. People that use the word Kia need to go outside. They need to touch grass. They need to get a job. The people on Twitter that are like shouting down the people that are competing with their faves or think that their faves make them look bad, I think are, a deranged and diseased portion of the population. The numbers speak for themselves. Guts did extremely well, and the tour is doing extremely well as well. And Olivia is literally only on her second record, and she is already doing an amazing job. And people are really responding to it, and she's getting a really good critical response, which I also think really upsets Stan Twitter, because Stan Twitter is all about like having like charts and metrics and facts to like throw at other people to prove that your fave is better than them. And they just don't understand the purpose of criticism. They just look at the Pitchfork score and go, go crazy. They don't understand that like actually responding to music and coming up with an opinion for a critic is about a lot more than whether or not it's a catchy song or whether or not it charted. In all reality, no one cares about charts other than record labels who are trying to make money. No one cares about charts. They are not a realistic metric of who is or isn't going to be a lasting legacy pop act. It's great to have a number one hit, but a number one hit does not build a career. Greedy is not going to cement Tate McRae's legacy. Espresso is not going to cement Sabrina Carpenter's legacy. Sour and Guts have already solidified Olivia as one of the most successful female artists of this generation, and that is proven not only by chart metrics, but also by the critical response to her work, and by how real people who like music are buying the music and responding to it. Young girls are feeling incredibly seen and represented by Olivia Rodrigo. She is doing something different to all of the other girls. She is focusing on building a legacy, a body of work. She's not chasing hits. She could chase hits if she wanted to. Guts was an extremely under-promoted record. If she really wanted to go balls to the wall with that and make different single choices, etc., she could have. But Olivia has an artistic vision, and she's still figuring it out. She's young. So I'm seated to see where she's going to go with it. And I know that the Olivia hate comes from a place of jealousy, threatened, hateration. Someone else said to me that the pop punk thing is really going to go out of style, and Olivia's going to be nothing without that. And to that I say, trends are cyclical, sure, but Olivia was successful without the pop punk thing. Like her ballads, Driver's License, her first single, was not a pop punk song at all, and I would say that's probably one of her most successful records. Vampire isn't particularly punk either. Olivia is really good at writing songs that you want to scream to, and whether or not that has like a punk rock edge to it is kind of immaterial, because if you look into her two very short albums, I would say at least 50% of it is not inspired by that punk pop thing, and that trend, my dear, is not going anywhere. It's not just a trend, it's like a recycling of the music industry. People are responding to that kind of music. They want to hear live instruments, and artists are dynamic and they adapt to the moment. So I'm sure that like if that ever starts to be something that's not relevant anymore, which again is not going to happen anytime soon, then Olivia will just pivot and go to do something else, or she'll go with whatever she feels called to do. She's interested in creating a document of female rage, and the current best medium for her to be doing that is through that like pop punk genre, and she's doing an incredible job. And you can just stay mad about it, I guess. I'm gonna have to be really careful about this because I'm genuinely afraid of her stance. Beyonce tries to be a flawless icon so much that her music feels empty. She's too perfect. I got this a lot. A lot of Beyonce is overrated, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, I really respect Beyonce as an artist, and I understand the impact that she has had on the communities that she represents. And I think that she's an incredibly important and innovative, groundbreaking artist that, of course, deserves all of her flowers. Lemonade is one of my favorite records, I think, of all time. It is an incredible feat. The vision, the execution, something you could never take away from Beyonce is her skill, like her mastery of the craft. The part where Beyonce kind of sags a little bit and fails to connect with me is that she doesn't seem like a real person. And a really like strong critique of Beyonce that has been issued over and over again is that she is not inclined to look ugly or to be vulnerable. And I don't mean ugly in like a physical sense. I mean that she is not a vulnerable artist. She doesn't really want you to know who Beyonce the person is. And I think that that works so spectacularly on a record like Renaissance, where she was really kind of creating something so specific for a specific kind of person, and she was being the avatar and letting all of this music and medium pass through her. Where it becomes a little bit harder to follow along with Beyonce, I think, is when she is doing something like Cowboy Carter, which I think is a little bit it was designed to prove a point, and art that comes from wanting to prove a point can really go one of two ways. It can be very impactful and powerful and like game changing, and then it can also read as a bit forced. And to me, I do read Cowboy Carter as being a bit forced. It feels very constructed. It doesn't feel very sincere. Whereas Renaissance, to me, I got the sense that she was really loving what she was doing, and she was like digging so deep into the references, and she cared so much about the genre. I don't get the sense that Beyonce cares about country music other than to kind of avenge herself and the treatment that she received in it, which is a very fair vantage point to come at creating this record from. However, for a listener, I found it very difficult to connect with that, because I was kind of like, yes, Beyonce, you're making points, but do I want to listen to these songs again? Are they going to become part of my life? Can I see myself even in them? Not really. Maybe you can. Maybe it's just not for me. Maybe I'm just not the target audience. That's totally possible. But I think that a huge barrier for entry to a lot of people for Beyonce, especially as she's niched down over the years. Someone said that she, could never be as successful as she was in the 2010s. And she stopped doing that. If you mean like around the I Am Sasha Fierce era, I think she made a very intentional and conscious decision to shift away from trying to be a chart performer, Grammy winner. I mean, that's still important to her, but I think she focused a lot more on like being an artist with a legacy, building a legacy, creating work that has like a meaning and a purpose and a message. And she has very successfully done that with all of her work since. So I think that that won't happen, not because she can't do it. I mean, look, Texas Hold'em just went #1. I think it won't happen because Beyonce's not interested in that mode of pop stardom anymore. She's carving out her own lane and her own niche. But I do agree that like Beyonce feels kind of inhuman at points, which is why I love things like the Renaissance documentary. Like that just really tied the whole project together and hit it home for me. I was like, this makes sense. We got a very small glimpse into some of the personal reasons behind why she felt so connected to this project, like her uncle being a costume designer who was gay. Those things are, details that really help you connect with an artist. And some people don't need to connect with their pop stars. They just need to look at them and bow down and worship. And Beyonce is that for a lot of people. So I understand, and I'm gonna let you rock. But, it's not always for me, I would say. But I respect and understand what Beyonce does as an artist. Sabrina comes across as fake, or that she's not being 100% herself. Also, Sabrina Carpenter should not be blowing up the way that she is. Interesting. I got a lot of messages about Sabrina. It was kind of like 70-30 split, I would say. 70, this is not going to be anything long term, and 30%, she is here to take the crown, and Espresso has proved that she's the next diva. I'm going to address the first point, which is that she comes across as fake or not being 100% herself. So you may know that I have gone on a bit of a journey with Sabrina Carpenter. I was a fully fledged hater, and not because I don't like her as a person. I just felt like she was so overhyped and the product was so average that I just couldn't understand it. And her fan base was pretty rabidly attacking me for a period of time, trying to force me to get into her. And if you try and force me to do anything, I'm naturally inclined to do the opposite. So if you want me to like something, the best way to get me to go about doing it is to suggest it to me in a way that I might enjoy it, not threaten me or browbeat me into listening to it. But I think my issue with Sabrina has always been that I never got what she was trying to do. It never felt like there was anything original about her, or there was something that I could connect with or grab onto. It just felt very much like algorithm Spotify pop music. And, I heard some of Emails I Can't Send. I listened to it all the way through twice, and none of it stuck with me. Like it wasn't sticky. That song Nonsense, like it's fun, Feather is fun, but I would never go into my library and like pick those songs to listen to. Espresso, however, is completely different. Now that is a hit and that is a diva. And I think that Sabrina has finally found her stride, and I have turned around because, as I said, I'm here for the slayage. When I feel like someone is going to slay, then I change my opinion and I'm ready and seated and willing to receive whatever they have to bring. Now that I feel like Sabrina is finally, doing something good, she's kind of in her bag, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm not going to like sit and bash and say that she's nothing and she doesn't have anything to be, celebrated. But what I will say about Sabrina is that it does read as a little bit inauthentic. And a lot of people were talking about like, why is she blowing up now? How has she suddenly blown up? She's, it's all overnight, and it's not overnight. That's the other thing with Sabrina that I think is very interesting, which leads me to another unpopular opinion. Sorry, we're just jumping all over the place. Sabrina has a more solid brand identity than Dua, even though she's just recently blowing up. That is kind of fake news. Sabrina is only recently blowing up because she's been trying to make her music career happen for years. She's put out like 3 studio albums. Were you aware of anything before Emails I Can't Send? No, most people aren't. She has iterated and tried to be so many different kinds of Sabrina Carpenter that it took her a long, long time to land on something that finally works. And there is something about Sabrina, going back to the inauthenticity, there is something about Sabrina that reads very like, not industry plant, but like industry calculation, because her music was not selling well enough and it wasn't doing good enough to be really investing in her projects over and over again. I have to believe that like a higher up at some company was like, I know that she's going to make it. And even though I don't have results that she is, I'm just going to keep funneling money towards it until we, finally land something that sticks. I think a lot of artists, Chapel, for example, don't really get that many chances to begin with at trying to make something happen, because Sabrina was all over the place. She was doing many different like interviews, and she performed at, several different like Good Morning shows. She had so many different singles, and it just wasn't landing because it, I think, never felt authentic. That song Sue Me was kind of fun. I liked that song, but there have been so many versions of Sabrina that her blowing up is not sudden at all. It's extremely calculated, and a huge boon to Sabrina has been being the opening act on the Eras tour. Taylor deliberately taking her under her wing and being like, I'm going to help make Sabrina Carpenter happen is very interesting. And she definitely helped make it happen. I think that Taylor supports the pop girls that have absolutely no threat to her crown. Hence, the love for Sabrina and the ignoring of Olivia for the most part. So I think that Sabrina has been kind of anointed by Taylor as you can have a little fun girl pop treat. I'm sure that meeting people on Taylor's tour, like the connections, the networking, the access that you have when you open on a tour, the audience you get to perform for every day, that really, is a make or break moment. That really helped Camila Cabello break through when she was opening on the Reputation tour. That also contributed to her blowing up. But that record that she was touring with Taylor has been out for like over a year before she even started performing it on tour. The Nonsense outro, nobody was really paying attention to that until the Eras tour started. Like, it has taken a lot of work and a lot of opportunities and a lot of other people's help to get Sabrina to where she is. And, I think they've decided and picked a lane for her, which is like sexy, silly, tongue-in-cheek, dad joke, like a little bit like a wink-wink kind of thing. Very notably, rejecting most of the content on Emails I Can't Send, which is like this kind of very middling, boring, because I Liked a Boy is a good example of this, disinteresting and not emotionally charged emotional fare. I have a real problem with, just acknowledging and celebrating things for being personal. Something being personal does not make it artistic or does not make it vulnerable. You need to combine it with an emotional insight, not just say, I was sad because I liked a boy and everyone attacks me on the internet. Okay, but the song is boring. Melodically, the song is not interesting. The lyrics are nothing new. This is what I mean. It's not enough to just bare your heart. You have to have a bit of sauce. There needs to be something magic and charismatic in it as well. All this to say, that comment saying that Sabrina has a fully fledged brand identity is hilarious to me because she struggled with that so much for so many years. This did not come easy to her, and I think it's unfair to Dua to compare her to that because Dua, with her second album, Future Nostalgia, already had a clearer brand identity than Sabrina did on album, what is going to be album 4 now. So let's not, compare apples to oranges is basically what I'm trying to say. And let's also not get ahead of ourselves. I think people are being a little delusional. Espresso is one song. It's one song. When they put her on SNL, she performed Espresso and then a mashup of Feather and Nonsense, 2 songs that have been out for years that have, done pretty good. They've done, pretty good numbers, but I wouldn't say they ever went like truly, viral or were true hits in the sense that Espresso was. Espresso was her first top 10 single, I believe, on the Hot 100. Again, like 6 years into your career, Took a while. But props to Sabrina for sticking with it as well. I mean, I'm not saying that she didn't work hard and that she doesn't deserve it. What I'm saying is the talent took a while to be mined into something that was actually interesting. I got a lot of thoughts about Dua Lipa as well. Again, contradicting opinions. Some people saying it's so fun, everybody needs to like lighten up and deal with it. Someone was saying it was better than Future Nostalgia, which is like true disease. I have to say the people that are really enjoying this new Dua record seem to be gays who can't read. That really seems to be the vibe. It's like gays on Twitter who like iced coffee in the wintertime as though that's a personality trait and who go to circuit parties. There's a very specific kind of gay that is absolutely head over heels in love with this record. And I have to say, you know, that's not me. And that's not, I think, most people critically who reviewed this album, because it was extremely boring. It was a snooze. It was a complete, total, forgettable number. That doesn't surprise me from Dua, because Dua does not have a thing. She is kind of an avatar. She is, you know, a canvas onto which other things get like thrown onto, and then you kind of decide if you like it or not. Someone also said, as an unpopular opinion, that Future Nostalgia isn't that good of an album and was only that good because of the moment it was received into, and we couldn't dance, we couldn't celebrate. That I really disagree with, because Future Nostalgia is just like plain old good pop music. It's interesting. Don't Start Now was like, I know it seems kind of dated now, but when it came out, that like new disco inspiration into pop music was kind of only just starting, and Dua really helped mainstream it. Also the visuals and the branding, the blonde hair, the kind of like 80s, 90s, like cyber punk like aesthetic that she had going for it, it felt like a very well thought out, cohesive album rollout. And it wasn't necessarily a statement, because I don't think she had anything to say, but it was like simply very good pop music. And Dua is very pretty, and she certainly upped her performance ability. She was giving on stage for once, which is something, you know, she kind of went viral for being the Go Girl, Give Us Nothing. But unfortunately with Radical Optimism, I fear she's reverted back to Go Girl, Give Us Nothing, because she's giving us nothing. There is nothing interesting about any of these songs. And it doesn't help that the way that she was talking about it in interviews was so lofty. She was saying that it was like a new arrival of Britpop, and it was inspired by like psycho pop, funkadelic. Like, she was saying the craziest stuff about this album, which ended up being the most predictable, unremarkable pop music ever. Even if you love it, you have to admit that it's really not that different from anything on the radio. I always say that Dua kind of like makes music for the gym, or music for like your Uber or your Lyft. You hear it and you're like, okay, sure, like I'll just do a little bop, but like you're not revisiting it. And I think that in 6 months, when we revisit all these people who love Radical Floptimism, they're not going to be revisiting it. And Dua herself, to me, seems a bit disengaged in being a pop star. I think she likes the idea of being a pop star. I think she likes being the it girl. I think she loves turning a look. I think she even does like performing. What I don't get a sense that she's interested in is being an artist. I don't get the sense that she's really in the studio trying to do something new. I don't get the sense that she loves writing. I don't really get the sense that she loves singing. I mean, her own perception of what the album was going to be versus what it ended up being is so radically different that I have to think that she doesn't really understand what she's doing herself, or she doesn't really have an intention for it to begin with. So I think that Dua should just be an influencer, because it seems like that's what she wants to do. And I mean, she made one really good Future Nostalgia. I think it's going to be diminishing returns from Dua going forward. She really reminds me of Katy Perry, like had a flash in the pan, huge hit for a record that did meet a moment and was something that everybody needed and wanted to hear for a while. She'll ride the goodwill of that record for a couple of years, but it's going to be diminishing returns. Like, we're not going to get another Future Nostalgia. We're not going to get another Teenage Dream. I just don't think like Katy Perry, Dua is that interested in being an artist. I will say that I think Katy Perry is like a better performer and is more charismatic than Dua, but I think that they both suffer from the problem of like not really having anything specific to say. And I don't mean that from a writing perspective even. I just don't get the sense that when they're performing their music or giving it to you, that they're really selling it. Someone said the singles from Radical Optimism were really boring, and I agree, but like the whole album was boring. So what else was she gonna pick? I knew from when I saw Houdini, I was like, oh, okay, so we're back to like generic like 2010s pop. There was really nothing different about Houdini from anything that Dua has done. And don't get me wrong, I bop it. Like, when I hear it, I'm like, I come and I go, but I don't play it, and I won't be returning to it. And it's not a great pop song. It's just kind of there. This one is funny. Lorde is better than Taylor, and her work with Jack should be more popular than Taylor Swift. Another Lorde opinion that I got was that Solar Power is a really underrated record, and that it's really beautiful, and also that she'll never make anything like Melodrama again. So those are kind of the Lorde opinions I want to discuss. Lorde's work with Jack Antonoff, being better than Taylor Swift's is just, I think, kind of crazy because there's so much more of Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff work. Lorde is not a very prolific artist, meaning she doesn't produce very much. She has 3 albums, and her best album with Jack Antonoff is incredibly short. There's like, what, 10, 11 songs with 2 interludes on Melodrama. And don't get me wrong, Melodrama is one of my top 5 favorite records of all time. But I think comparing that handful of songs to like all of the work that Taylor has done with Jack Antonoff is a bit deranged. And also, I think that Jack Antonoff's work on Solar Power did a disservice to the record, and also just in general, like that combination, that record, if you think it's beautiful, that's great for you. It was a complete commercial flop. Look up the numbers that it did, terrible, which is an indication when something is really, really flopping like that in sales, even when your hardcore fans are not buying the physical copies of the album, that's when you know that you really have not landed on something good. The hype for a Lorde comeback is always so big because she disappears so much and she releases so infrequently. So to really fumble the bag with Solar Power, I think was very mystifying, especially because it wasn't like she had like this huge discography to kind of rest her laurels on and be like, okay, well, she is really, really capable of doing amazing, amazing things. So like, I'm just going to stay tuned for the next one. I felt like Solar Power was so forced and so just out of touch. And I think that this is a problem that Lorde is running into a lot by being so like out of tune, out of step with the mainstream. She's not really familiar with like what is popular anymore. And when you're a pop artist, you need to be keeping abreast of like what's going on. If you think about what made Melodrama and Pure Heroine so excellent, it's the fact that both of those records were really kind of in lockstep with what was going on in culture at the time. Melodrama is very like of that era. That was really when Jack Antonoff was doing his first like full-length pop girl projects. She trailblazed there, but also she was like talking about like drinking and like partying, and that was very much kind of like what was going on, but with like an emotional edge in the culture at the time. Pure Heroine was like almost entirely a response to the excessive like hyper-capitalist consumerist culture of the early 2010s, really responding to things like rap music and Lana Del Rey and this like ostentatious maximalism. Like, Lorde is a great social commentator and an artist when she is responding to something. When she goes to New Zealand and goes, I love the beach, that is just not that interesting. And the eco pop of it all, again, lofty ambitions, not very good execution. I think the saddest thing about Solar Power to me is that the writing on it is so shallow and not at all profound. And it is delivered to you in the sense that it is some sort of profound realization. And I think that that is upsetting. And I really do believe that Lorde is like completely capable of doing great things. But I also think that she is a bit up herself sometimes. She has a little bit of a superiority complex. Charlie XCX suffers from this issue too, which we will get into. But I think that Lorde, like in general, can have a huge return to form should she want one, and should she be a little bit more selective with who she works with and how she creates whatever record it's going to be. I think, she understands that it's time to go back to the drawing board. She said after Solar Power there would be more bangers, and I don't think it's even a scenario of there needing to be more bangers, because Pure Heroine was pretty like low key, other than like Team, and I guess like Royals isn't really a banger either. But I think that she has a certain kind of edge to her that is interesting, that was missing from Solar Power. It was like, well, where's my angsty hater? Lorde's kind of a hater. She's a little bit of a hater. And it's like, I don't want to see you blonde and kind of cavorting around the beach. Do that in your personal time. In pop star time, we need to be doing something interesting. And Lorde knows that. If you heard the song Silver Moon, I loved that. I think that was an outtake from Solar Power that didn't make it. Mistake, or it's for the next record, but she performed that, and I think that it's so good. And I think that's really what Solar Power could have been, a little bit more of like a beachy, summery vibe, but still having that like existential angst to it, still having that kind of like glamorous sadness that I think we are really missing from Lorde at the moment. Lorde has better lyrics than Lana. What's the point in saying that? What is the point in saying that? They are so different, it is difficult to compare. Although I guess, like, as pop girls go, Lorde is the closest one to Lana, in that Lana is very, very center left and kind of isn't really a pop girl, apart from the fact that people treat her like she is one. Musically, she's kind of not. Lorde is a different kind of writer. Lorde is a lot more sparse and a lot more direct when she's on form. However, when she tries to write like Lana, which I think she did a lot of on Solar Power, that just saying, I think she heard Norman Effing Rockwell and said, well, I can do that. And that was definitely an inspiration. When she tries to go into extremely wordy territory and really go into like more complicated existential themes, it's not as good. It's not as interesting. It's not as on the nose. Lana is, I think, first and foremost a writer, before she's a singer, before she's a communicator. Lorde, to me, is more of an artist. Like, all of the things come at the same time. She has like synesthesia. She sees things in colors. Before she even writes a song, she can imagine how the stage is going to look. She's a lot more of a performer, and Lana is a lot more of a creator. So I think it's a bit unfair to even compare Lorde to Lana. Also, again, because her discography is so brief and there is so much in Lana's. I mean, Lana just writes and writes and writes and sings and sings and sings. There is more fruitful and accurate work to be picked out from Lana than there is from Lorde, even though Lorde is still great, of course. Addison Rae could be the next big pop sensation, but people are just hating. All right, we need to be realistic about Addison Rae. The thing about Addison Rae is that it's kind of a joke. It is kind of a joke. Charli XCX recently, has given her the seal of approval and said Addison Rae is everything. And I think she is everything to a certain extent. She is not good enough to be a pop girl, a main pop girl. She just isn't. Sorry. Like, we all know this to be true. She's not that good of a singer. She's not that good of a dancer. It's the midness of it all that makes it kind of camp and interesting. And she doesn't really have a self-awareness of the fact that that's why it seems like Addison does have an awareness of that's why people do like her, and she leans into it, which I love. I think she's smarter than she lets on, for sure. Charli said that in the studio, recently in an interview, she said that Addison in the studio is like extremely creative. She comes up with lyrics, she comes up with melodies, and that only happened after they started working together. Before that, it was very much like she's in the studio, get her on a song, she'll record it, and she'll leave with no notes. So I was very surprised to hear that Charli was, kind of gushing about Addison's creative abilities, because Charli can just say, oh, she's an icon. She's iconic. Like, I love her. And she has said that before. What I hadn't heard, and that Charli said, she also was surprised by Addison's abilities in the studio. So with that said, I'm like, but are you lacking the ambition to do something? Because why have we not capitalized on the momentum? Why have we not followed that up? I don't think that Addison seems to be that interested in being a pop star. So I don't think that the public is holding her back from that. I think her lack of output probably is, and interest in doing it. She just is a girly. She's a girly. If she wanted to be the girly, she could try, but I don't think that it's really within her desire or her capability, to be very honest with you. I always compare Addison Rae to Hilary Duff in that, like, she is, our queen vapid pop star who just is, a middle-class pop star. She could do really fun, vacant stuff. Going to one of her shows would be fun. You go with your friends, you dance, but it's not iconic, and it's not going to be remembered as like pop excellence. Nothing that Addison has done is like excellent. It's all like tongue-in-cheek, great Y2K referential pop. She does not have a versatility outside of that. Maybe she could be folded into that like hyper pop scene, and she could become like a real kind of like cult classic in that sense. But in terms of being like a mainstream pop star, that ship has sailed. In fact, that ship never arrived for her. Charli should stop trying to be mainstream, even though she makes bangers. I feel like she has kind of stopped trying to do that and has learned her lesson. Something that I find really interesting and also a little bit off-putting about Charli XCX is that she's really high on her own supply. Once she became a cult classic in the hyperpop space, she really, had an overinflated sense of self. And I think Charli is great, and she has pioneered a very specific kind of thing. But at the end of the day, what you have to remember is that what Charli pioneered is very niche. It has not resonated like globally. It doesn't have the kind of reach that like a true pop smash or like a true pop visionary or icon has. Charli XCX's legacy is a lot more understated. You see influences and trickles of her elsewhere, but like direct references are a little bit more few and far between. And the people that are referencing Charli are like niching down. They're not bringing what Charli does to the mainstream. Camila Cabello is allegedly trying to do that and flopping immensely currently. That's not working. People in general, like general pop music, like enjoyers, are not turning up Von Dutch. They're not turning up Pop 2. They're not turning up Number One Angel. They want to listen to Boom Clap, and that's it. They don't want to hear Crash. Charli, I think, has a bit of an arrogance about her. She's like, I can write hits for other people, so I can also write hits for myself. And the thing that she's missing there is that, like, the other people make the hit as well. It's not just your song that makes it a hit. It's the other people delivering it. Same Old Love is a hit because Selena Gomez sang it at that specific period in her career with the specific context that came with the song, the whole Justin Bieber drama and breakup. There are reasons why Charli's songs are very successful, and part of those reasons is that she is not the one performing them, because the songs that she keeps for herself and performs don't do that well. They really just, I think her whole point with Crash, which was a bit embarrassing, was like, I can be a main pop girl, and this is me showing you that I can, and then nobody moved. Her fans moved, of course, but did it break into the mainstream? Were people really streaming any of those songs? Not really. Be honest with yourselves. Not really. If you're a Charlie head, you know what I'm talking about. I would never want to reject her legacy or deny that she's an incredibly influential, like groundbreaking artist, but I think she overestimates her abilities and also her actual influence. But I think she's dialed that down now. And she's a little bit more cognizant of the fact that she is a niche artist, and she's embraced that instead of being a bit resentful that she's not as big as her contemporaries or who she feels are her contemporaries. Something else that someone said was that Charlie's antics are really annoying, and something about Charlie that I do find very annoying is, and my co-host of The Evolution of Snake, Madeline, who has an incredible music blog called The Lizard View, go listen to it, has said this about Charlie multiple times. She's very dismissive of her own catalog. She'll be like, when she's creating a new project, she'll be like, that last one was garbage and it wasn't real music, and now I'm making real music. And it's like, well, why are you spitting on your own legacy? Let other people do that for you. You should be like celebrating and uplifting the art that you made and like being proud of who you were in that moment when you made it. And also, it makes you seem a little bit inauthentic. It makes it seem like you don't even really believe in yourself. On the one hand, you're very cocky and arrogant and saying that you are the blueprint. On the other hand, you're saying that the last music you released, you just did it because you had to and it was garbage. And what kind of artist compromises their integrity like that? Do you see what I mean? It's like she says too much. She talks too much. If she would just be quiet and let the legacy kind of build itself and speak for itself, I think that would be very powerful. I also like am so seated for this new Charlie era. You would think that, you know, as a big mainstream pop kind of person that doesn't really enjoy hyperpop all that much, you would have think that I would have been completely seated for Crash, but Crash to me read like a hyperpop artist trying to do big pop. It didn't read like authentic, actual pop girl music, which is why I failed to connect. I am really enjoying this like new record. She's kind of billed it as like the most extreme version of her ever, but to me this is like a compromise between the Crash Charlie and the Pop 2 Charlie. It's like not so robotic, but it's also like not just the regular pop that you're gonna hear every day on the radio. Von Dutch I thought was really good. The visuals so far for this record have been really cool. Charlie is a tastemaker and an it girl, truly, like that is kind of her lane. And the 360 video, come on, I've watched that like 100 times. It is an incredible video, and the cameos that she got in it, like Charlie, when she's niching down and understanding her place in the culture and playing into it and not trying to get a #1 hit, that's when she's really in her bag. And that's why I think Brat is going to be really good. Lady Gaga's music is not very interesting. She has a few bangers, though. I think a lot of people are going to be mad at me when I say this, but I agree. I think that Gaga is like a truly sporadic artist, and she hasn't been like really in her creative bag since Art Pop. I think it really, that album not doing well at the time really did something to her brain, and broke her in a way that I think that she like now every album since then to me has read a bit like a pivot into what she thinks people want from her, and that is not a very authentic place to create music from. I read Chromatica as well as kind of like a last ditch attempt at really like appealing to her core fan base, and she was so lucky that she got Ariana on Rain on Me, and that became a moment during the pandemic. Like that was really lucky, because I think that if there was no Rain on Me, then Chromatica really would not have made much noise or been very interesting at all. Stupid Love, the lead single, was just kind of there. I think that Gaga is incredibly talented. That goes without saying. She is like a true musician and a true performer. That is where she really shines. But when she was doing her like Vegas residency and like her tours in general, she relies so much on like hits from 2008. Like that really is kind of her bag that she has to circle back to. The Fame was a really good, solid pop debut. The Fame Monster, I think, was super interesting and was doing like weird personality, quirky stuff. She was really in her bag. I thought Born This Way was really good. I was super interested in like a lot of the album tracks on that. We have like Black Jesus and Fashion of His Love and Highway Unicorn. She was really in her bag there for a second when she was, you know, again, kind of like Charlie, high on her own supply and really trying to be an innovator. And I think she was also, in the earlier part of her career, absolutely following the Madonna model, which totally helped, but also didn't make her seem entirely original. People pointed out that comparison as soon as it was made, and I think it's kind of rung true, and they do occupy similar spaces, I think, in like specifically the gay pop culture fans' imagination. And Art Pop to me was great. Like, I really liked it even when it came out. I thought that it was so interesting. It was experimental. It was interesting seeing the Katy Perry versus Lady Gaga lead single like war battle. It was roar and it was applause. And everybody was kind of like, this was before we all got crowns, by the way. And they were the two main pop girls. This was back in the day when there were like two. There wasn't, and Rihanna was kind of like on the outskirts and Beyonce was doing her own thing. But at that time, it was like the current pop stars that are vying for #1 main pop girl of all time are Katy Perry and Lady Gaga, and they're releasing at the same time. And I was really convinced that Gaga was going to take it because I was like, she's a better artist. She's more interesting. She has more, I would say, like creative evolution to her name. The Born This Way ball was like a huge like cultural phenomenon, and the gay rights was like kind of, you know, really becoming more mainstream again, and Gaga was a huge part of that. The meat dress, like she was just monopolizing culture so much that I assumed that the song would just slap and slay. And she put out Applause, which is a weird song. Even to this day, it reminds me of Look What You Made Me Do, in that it's a really atypical pop song, and people were very polarized by it when it came out. And Katy Perry put out Roar, which is a boring, generic pop song, also a ripoff of Sarah Bareilles' Brave, and that went number one, because when you're a main pop girl, people are more interested in like what has replay value rather than like what is interesting. And that's kind of a curse, I think, that can befall the main pop girl. And it takes a very special kind of pop girl to be able to marry the two, the interesting and the, you know, familiar and the rote. And I think if Katy Perry hadn't released Roar and there wasn't that competition between the two of them, then Art Pop may have been received differently, because it was kind of literally set up and laid up as a flop. People were surprised that Gaga didn't take the crown. And even though they asked not to be compared to each other, people did it anyway. So I think then the marketing and the messaging for Art Pop got very confusing. It was a very expensive record to make. So I think that she was told very clearly in no uncertain terms for her next record that, first of all, it had to be a success, and second of all, she wasn't going to get the budget that she had for Art Pop to do it. And what did we get? Joanne, which to me is like the biggest flop of all time. Like really, truly just a bad album from a confused artist that did not have a clear direction or sense of self. And I thought that was really like disappointing and sad, because Art Pop was really good and it was really interesting. The visuals were really cool. And I think that she's kind of just lost her confidence a little bit and never been able to gain it back as a pop star. Hence her explanation of other areas of entertainment. And something she can do that Madonna could never do is act and sing well enough to act in a musical like movie. And A Star Is Born, someone said also in an unpopular opinion that it saved her career. And I think that it didn't save her pop career, because her pop career, I think, never really recovered from Art Pop and hasn't really either. What I think it did was it saved her like entertainment presence, because it allowed people to view her as more than a one-trick pony, more than just a shock jock. It allowed people to view her as like a serious entertainer and performer, and she has doubled down on that a lot. I think she's much more interested in being like an actress and a stage performer than she is in being a pop star. And you know what? I think that's the right decision. I think she's better at it, and too much time has elapsed. She can always do her greatest hits tours and serve and do the old hits, but I think that her era of being able to produce like creatively interesting and successful and like culture shifting pop music is well and truly over. Now let's talk about Camila Cabello. I got a lot of messages about Camila Cabello as well, most of them saying I love it as a flop and what is going on. Someone said the only thing that made Camila Cabello relevant was people being overly invested in Sean Mila. I think Camila was relevant before that. Like her first album, her debut, really had a lot of buzz around it, and that was definitely pre-Sean. Like Havana was popping off. People were interested in the story of the first girl to leave Fifth Harmony. They were invested in the beef. So I don't think that that's true. I mean, I think actually the Sean Mila thing probably has served as a detriment to her career, in that people were too focused on that. And that is the danger of like a relationship that is undertaken. First of all, I don't know if I'm not going to call it PR because I don't like to go down that lane, but it definitely did seem like it was a strategic decision to be so public about their relationship and to do songs like Senorita. And I think what happens then is like you can't uplift two people at the same time. One person kind of ends up overshadowing the other. And Shawn Mendes was like a hot, hunky, like Hollywood like boy star, and I think that that was always going to override Camila in that sense, because Camila didn't really have the strongest like catalog before that, and the music that she released when she was in the relationship was not that interesting. So she would always kind of have to revert back to Sean Mila to get attention, rather than like focusing on making really good art and music that got attention. And I think that that actually ended up being a little bit hurtful and harmful to her career. What's interesting is that, you know who else is following this model of like using a relationship to further their career, and this is an incredibly important part of her rebrand that I can't believe I didn't bring up earlier, Sabrina Carpenter. The Barry relationship with Sabrina is like totally calculated to like be viral, and people are loving it. They're buying into it. It is a time-tested tradition that like cute relationships between attractive famous people make both of those famous people generally more successful. I think it works best when the two people are in different industries and they're not competitors, because at the end of the day, Sean and Camila are both musicians, and they are both, when releasing albums, especially at the same time, each other's competition. So one person is always going to overshadow the other. Whereas with like an actor and a singer, they're doing completely different things. They only stand to benefit by being exposed to the other person's following and audience. So that is something that I think Sabrina is definitely following and has contributed hugely to the success of her rebrand and her brand identity being built. But again, as we've seen with Camila, that is kind of a dangerous place to put your roots. It's not always going to be the most successful way for you to build your own legacy. You still have to focus on being creative. But I think that, yeah, that Sean Mila thing didn't actually end up helping Camila at all. Someone said Camila Cabello's new era could have been iconic, but it wasn't handled well with the first single. Okay. For an era to be iconic, the music has to be good. Neither the first single nor the second single are good. And you can't mishandle a bad song. If the song is bad, it's not going to connect. I Love It has dropped like a rock off the charts. People are not interested in streaming it, even though I have Camila Cabello defenders in my comments every day telling me it's the greatest song ever created. The people are not listening. The people are not streaming. No one really cares. People have moved on. The second song that came out is less offensive than the first one, but certainly not interesting. And again, being boring is a lot worse than being bad. So to me, I don't understand this era. Someone also said she's going to have her It Girl summer and everyone's going to realize. And it's like going blonde and serving a look and being trendy like a TikTok girl is not enough to define an era. It is not enough to be an it girl. It might be enough to be an it girl of the week, but it's certainly not enough to have an iconic era, and nothing can make up for average or bad music. No amount of branding, no amount of handling, no amount of positioning, no amount of collaborations can make up for music that is inherently not good or not interesting. And from what I've heard from Camila so far, this is some of her worst work ever. Not only is it bad, it's also forgettable. And I really like her look as well. I'm really into the aesthetic that she's adopted for this. If I turned off the sound on her Coachella performance with Lana, I would be like, oh, she's giving. But then I turn the sound on and I'm like, I have to turn it off. So to me, Camila is an interesting case because she doesn't have a stable brand identity and she's not getting any closer to it with this. And I guarantee you, once this comes out and flops, as it will, she will pivot and go back to doing Havana. That's literally what she's going to do. And that will prove my point, which is that she doesn't have a stable brand identity as an artist. All right, I think I've yapped on enough for today, so I'll stop there. But I have another one of these coming soon. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you want to see And don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you want to participate in unpopular opinion in the future. All right, goodbye, everyone. I will see you in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe.